The topic of crunch has been prevalent over the last few years as more and more developers speak out about some of the horror stories that they've experienced during a AAA project's development. And among the companies that have found themselves facing backlash as a result of their crunch culture is CD Projekt Red. Some years back, I covered this topic, many outlets did as well. And since then, CD Projekt Red made the commitment that they would never enforce crunch. There would never be mandatory crunch. But recently it's come to my attention that this is a promise that CD Projekt won't be able to keep, and this is something that Jason Schreier has looked into and reported on. So here's everything you need to know about this. Starting with a tweet from Jason Schreier that reads, "Last year, the bosses of CD Projekt Red approached me for an interview. They wanted to announce that for Cyberpunk 2077, they'd be avoiding mandatory crunch. This week, they sent out an email to staff announcing studio-wide mandatory crunch." Indeed, CD Projekt Red has stated numerous times that there would not be mandatory crunch and that they would be more humane to its workers, their words. So this is an article published back in May of 2019 when Jason Schreier interviewed Marcin Iwinski. He said, "We're known, let me be humble for a moment here, we are known for treating gamers with respect. This is what we have been working hard toward, and I actually would like for us to also be known for treating developers with respect." So Iwinski said that there would be a non-obligatory crunch policy. He wants to make it clear to Cyberpunk 2077's developers that even when the studio asks them to work on nights and weekends, it's not mandatory. But the issue with this argument is that there's a power dynamic between bosses and ground floor employees, where ground floor employees might not feel comfortable telling their boss that I want to work less today because they're afraid that that might lead to the bosses perceiving that this person is lazier than the others, and that might bottleneck their ability to rise up through the ranks. So there's just an inherent not wanting to show weakness, if you will. Not to mention that these people who might take off on time rather than late might be given the stink eye by those who do stay late, and that culture, even if crunch is optional, paves a road for a lot of these devs feeling like it is low-key mandatory because of the culture and the pressures involved. But as far as ensuring crunch doesn't permeate CD Projekt Red and the development of Cyberpunk, Iwinski said, "We have been working toward it for some time already. We have been communicating clearly to people that, of course, there are certain moments where we need to work harder, like I think the E3 demo is a pretty good example, but we want to be more humane and treat people with respect. If they need to take time off, they can take time off. Nobody will be frowned upon if this will be requested." Here's one last quote worth pointing out. "I think this is the commitment we're ready to make today, and we'll be listening to people. We definitely open a lot of lines of dialogue here, and we'd like to start with that." The following month, on June of 2019, Jason Schreier released another article in which Iwinski reaffirmed that they are committed to ensuring that there's no mandatory crunch. So Jason asked, "If I'm a designer at CD Projekt Red and I say, you know what, I have kids, I have family, I'm going to work from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day and that's it, even until the very end, am I going to be okay with that?" Iwinski said, yes. Jason asked, "No matter what?" Iwinski responded, "Yes." Jason said, "So you can commit to that?" Iwinski responded, "We have committed to that already." And that finally brings us to today's article from September 29th, 2020, published by Jason on Bloomberg, which relays that CD Projekt Red has officially mandated crunch in the form of an order that requires people to work for 6 days a week rather than 5 days a week, and each of those days will all be jam-packed. No doubt there will be a significant amount of overtime in each of those days. And so, as relayed by Jason here, Polish video game developer CD Projekt Red told employees on Monday that 6-day work weeks will be mandatory leading up to the November release of the highly anticipated Cyberpunk 2077, reneging on an earlier promise to not force overtime on the project. An email to staff was sent earlier this week indicating that the company hasn't lived up to its word. The employee, who asked me not to be named discussing private information, said some staff had already been putting in nights and weekends for more than a year. Look, I do think that on some level, any company that's about to release a product will have crunch to an extent. There will always be a little bit more work involved in those final days, but the issue is when the crunch is sustained not for a couple days or weeks, but for months and years. And CD Projekt Red has faced this with Witcher 3. I've heard plenty of horror stories about that game's development with a number of developers who have reached out to me. Now they're mandating this crunch when they said that they wouldn't do so. So for them to not be able to live up to that is really a damn shame, because developers need a proper, healthy work environment to do their best work. Burning them out is just not going to do them any good, especially in the long term. So yeah, this is information that came from an email that CD Projekt Red sent to all developers. And here's the email in question as written by Adam Badowski. Starting today, the entire development studio is in overdrive. Your typical amount of work and 1 day of the weekend. Now, there is the silver lining that the extra work would be paid as required by Polish labor laws. Many other video game studios don't pay for overtime. And then Adam Badowski concluded with, I take it upon myself to receive the full backlash for the decision. I know this is in direct opposition to what we have said about crunch. It's also in direct opposition to what I personally grew to believe a while back, that crunch should never be the answer, but we have extended all other possible means of navigating the situation. CD Projekt Red has responded to the report in a number of ways, starting with a statement provided to Bloomberg. So according to the article, CD Projekt's chief financial officer Piotr Nulobovich responded to Bloomberg questions in an email saying that Cyberpunk's November 19th launch won't be changed, adding that the studio is working to eliminate most bugs at the last rate, the main reason it asks employees to work an extra day. So it would seem as though there's plenty of polishing left to do for Cyberpunk 2077. They're committed to meeting that November 19th launch date. And to that end, they're mandating crunch. They're mandating that 6 days a week overtime in order to get the results that they want. And then beyond that, Adam Badowski retweeted Jason Schreier and had the following to say, these last 6 weeks are our final sprint on a project we have all spent much of our lives on, something we care for deeply. The majority of the team understands that push, especially in light of the fact that we have just sent the game to CERT, and every day brings us visibly closer to shipping a game we want to be proud of. This is one of the hardest decisions I've had to make, but everyone is well compensated for every extra hour they put in. And like in recent years, 10% of the annual profit our company generates in 2020 will be split directly among the team. So look, on one hand, I do believe that CD Projekt Red genuinely wants to put their best foot forward. They want to launch the best product possible. They want Cyberpunk 2077 to be in the most polished state come launch. But I do believe that normalizing crunch is not a healthy thing for the games industry. Droves of talent are leaving the industry because they just can't handle the kind of workload, the sustained workload, not over days or weeks, but over months and years that comes with certain companies' culture. And CD Projekt Red, they had made that commitment to shift away from that culture, which I appreciated. So to learn that they're kind of completely reneging on that promise is unfortunate to see, really. Adam says right here that the majority of the team understands that push. Well, it's easy for the boss of a company to speak for all of the ground floor developers, but I'd like to hear what the ground floor developers have to say. I mean, the fact that one of the developers decided to reach out to a news outlet so this information could be made public speaks to the fact that not everyone at CD Projekt Red is happy with this decision on the part of leadership. I'm not saying that there aren't people who are more than happy to work overtime, but that has to be a choice. Optional crunch by itself has some gray areas, but when you're mandating crunch, and when that's all on top of existing sustained crunch, I mean, that's when this kind of culture is exacerbated to a degree where it really is very unhealthy. And a couple people have already responded to Adam, expressing their dissent at his stance when it comes to this crunch situation, this mandatory crunch situation. For example, this Twitter user said, it's still crunch, but it's paid well, so it's okay. I'm amazed that this is all it took for suckers to forgive this. Abdul Ahmad, who is a developer, said, in my experience as an engineer lead, your team isn't going to tell you to your face that they think this decision sucks, but they'll definitely be telling their families and other coworkers about it. And that's indeed true. A lot of ground floor developers are not enthused about the idea of telling their boss, who hold your livelihood in their hands because they could fire you at any moment or bottleneck you in terms of career progression at any moment. That, I don't like the way you do things. I don't like that this decision was made. They're just not going to say that out loud because there's a certain level of fear and pressure to just kind of fall in line. Abdul continues, too, when a game falls behind a schedule, the people at fault are management. I 100% agree with this. And then he continues, good management will learn from their mistakes and, 1, ensure the estimates are accurate by working closely with engineering and identifying misses. 2, put in a buffer so that even if they are late, they'll still hit their deadline. And 3, take responsibility for missing the deadline. Bad management will just say, let's work harder, longer, guys. Bad management will be thinking about how this affects their career and their personal bank. Good management will be thinking about how this affects each and everyone's lives, including their spouses, kids' lives. There's this notion that crunch is just a necessary part of any game development cycle. And I've said before, I think it'll happen to a degree leading up to a game's launch. But the amount of sustained crunch that happens is just... It simply crosses a line, and there has to be a way to be able to pull that back. The fact of the matter is that it doesn't have to be this way. You can still output the same quality while still managing things properly in such a way that development will go smoothly and employees, developers, the people who make these games, who need to be in the best state of mind to do their best work, are able to live a life that allows them to balance work and family. Now, there's already been some debate about this, which comes as no surprise. CD Projekt Red is a beloved company, and I understand that people, they want to support them because, yes, they do make incredible games. They are very consumer-friendly, but for my part, I need to hold all game companies to the same standards. Now, there are folks who have been saying that this story is a whole lot of nothing. Colin Moriarty, for example, tweeted, sorry, but that CD Projekt story is much ado about nothing. Is it ideal? No, but the team is essentially being asked for 7 extra days of paid work. The better the game is, the better off they'll all do. Jason responded with, this is quite a take. It's also spreading misinformation to a wide audience. As I reported today, this week's email is the first instance of mandatory crunch. Some at CD Projekt Red say they've been crunching for months. Others have been working overtime in fits and starts for years. And then he added, crunch is too complicated and nuanced a subject for Twitter soundbites. It comes in many different forms and hits people in many different ways. It's pressure, it's culture, it's people giving you dirty looks because you're not being a team player by going home to your kids. In addition to that, Jason Schreier added in a follow-up tweet, I think what a lot of folks fail to understand is that crunch isn't just a few weeks or overtime here and there. It's a culture, an atmosphere, a top-down expectation. Nights and weekends are the norm, and you certainly aren't being paid like a banker or Silicon Valley engineer. Crunch can be exhilarating and it can be oppressive. It has ruined lives and marriages. It has pushed countless people out of their dream jobs in the video game industry. Now, some people will argue, well, CD Projekt Red is compensating these developers. They're getting paid overtime, and the team is going to be splitting 10% of the annual profit of their company. And considering how many copies Cyberpunk is going to sell, no doubt that the developers will get a sizable financial compensation from all of this. But a better version of something that's not ideal doesn't make that thing ideal. Crunch should be eliminated, period. We should at least strive for that as much as we possibly can, rather than just saying, this is just what it is, it's just what happens. And it's easy to say, well, this is just how things have been, so things should just stay the same because this is normal. But the whole point of striving for a better tomorrow, for a better industry, is to take the things that are normal in a bad way and try to kind of break that mold and try to go in a different direction that will pave the road for a better work environment across the board so that less developers burn out, more talent is retained, game development cycles become more efficient, and that way, everyone gets to win. Now, one potential solution a lot of people are suggesting is to maybe delay the game to give developers some respite. But my fear, and this is something that's happened, is delays often lead to the same level of crunch just being sustained for longer. Things don't calm down. Things just kind of remain at that same level of crunch just for a longer period of time. And I feel like that's what would happen, and I don't think CD Projekt Red is willing to delay again. This would be their third delay if they did delay Cyberpunk 2077. I think they're fully committed to a November 19th release, and I don't think a delay would really improve things. It would, I think, just kind of exhaust the developers more. It's really all about early planning and proper management, and not everything goes as planned during a development cycle. Things go off road and, derail constantly. There's just so many unpredictable factors during a game's development cycle. But when developers are crunching for months and years on a sustained level, and when that culminates in mandatory crunch that the company promised wouldn't happen, I mean, that's just not a good look at all. I'm not saying this because I want to hate on CD Projekt Red. I say this because I care about CD Projekt Red's future. I want them to be the best version of themselves that they can be. They've got the quality of the games down. They've got the consumer friendliness down. The one thing I've had an issue with was their employment practices. And not just because of Jason Schreier's reporting, but also because a lot of CD Projekt Red developers have reached out to me over the years, noting that, this kind of crunch culture isn't abnormal at CD Projekt Red. They've talked about some of the bad management practices that have led to bottlenecks that have led to this level of crunch. I do believe it when Adam says that it wasn't an easy decision, that he cares about Cyberpunk 2077 deeply, that he is trying to just put out the best game possible, but you can do that without working your developers to a complete burnout. You can do that without normalizing this idea that crunch is absolutely necessary. It's not. It's a product of bad management, plain and simple. So that's one man's stance on this whole situation. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on Jason Schreier's reporting and CD Projekt Red's response to what they've confirmed to be mandated crunch within this final stretch of Cyberpunk 2077's development in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.